The risky villain change in Blood Origin could set up The Witcher's best future, if that's even possible after Henry Cavill's exit, but that's a story for another day. Meanwhile, here's how Blood Origin perfectly sets up The Witcher. The Witcher Blood Origin takes place 1200 years before The Witcher, when Eredin was still an elf. And, for the most part, the show paints him as a bumbling and often underprepared servant of Baelor. However, as the series progresses, Eredin's life gets a whole lot more exciting, but not in a good way. Eredin betrays Baelor in the middle of the spin-off series and forms an alliance with Empress Merwin to gain more power over the gateways to different dimensions. In the last episode, Baelor pretends to forgive Eredin and accompanies him on an expedition to another world. There, rather than gifting Eredin with a new world he can conquer, Baelor lures Eredin and his allies to the Barren Lands so he can sacrifice his apprentice Fenric and get chaos magic. And when he finally gets it, Baelor sends Eredin and his men into a dying dimension using chaos magic, dooming them to an eternity of suffering. In one of the closing scenes from the last episode, Eredin can be seen wandering around the barren landscape, hungry and desperate. And just when everyone thought it was over, he suddenly digs up a bone helmet, which turns out to belong to the leader of the Wild Hunt. From this point, we're about to see a very different Eredin than what we saw earlier in the season. He's cruel, conniving, and plain evil, and this change could set up a huge arc for Eredin. Seeing him go from kind of a loser, no offense, to one of The Witcher's most formidable foes could be super interesting. The character arc that takes place between Blood Origin and The Witcher will deepen Eredin's depravity by exposing his former self before he was abandoned and broken by his experiences in the other world. And as we've seen time and time again, there's no one more dangerous than a broken villain. Why? Well, because they've got nothing left to lose. And that's exactly the position Eredin finds himself in. And an arc like this is even more impactful when the audience can see what the character was like previously. This allows them to have a more intimate connection with their story. And if you ask me, Blood Origin has done The Witcher a huge favor by giving Eredin this kind of arc. You see, Eredin's story in Blood Origins is really smart because it helps The Witcher avoid a major Wild Hunt problem. Why? Cause most of the work's already been done. By setting up Eredin as the Wild Hunt's leader, Blood Origin has given the audience a reason to care about him. This means fans will be more invested in the character by the time he shows up in The Witcher. Also, this allows the show to jump straight into the Wild Hunt's arc in Season 3, without having to spend a lot of time establishing Eredin. Whew! There are only so many character introductions we can handle in this show. Plus, The Witcher Season 3 already has a lot on its plate, so the introduction of the Wild Hunt in Blood Origin really lifts a huge weight off the writer's shoulders. But while the writers may have it a little easy in Season 3, there is someone who won't. Ciri. The last time we saw her, she was dodging the villains lining up to take her powers, and with the Wild Hunt in the mix, you can bet that they're going to be on the very top of that list. Also, since Eredin's backstory has already been established, Season 3 can dive right into this. Or at least it should. But whatever route they take, things aren't looking too good for Ciri. Wanna know who else things aren't looking good for? Hardcore Witcher fans. Season 2 of Netflix's The Witcher makes even more dramatic tweaks to the source material than Season 1. And by dramatic, I mean very dramatic. Like, they reinterpreted characters, killed one, introduced entirely new concepts, such as the idea that Ciri's blood could be used to create new Witchers, and generally took a free hand with the established Witcher canon. Obviously, this didn't go over very well with the series' hardcore fans, who were initially under the impression Netflix would stay somewhat true to the source material. Fans were incredibly vocal online about how the streaming giant butchered their favorite fantasy series. However, it appears that the showrunners don't really care. Yeah, we saw the first signs of this in the show's prequel series, Blood Origin. as the writers basically repeated the same mistakes they did in The Witcher. It also broke the previously accepted canon, altering our understanding of the continent's past, the origins of Witchers, and the early lives of people we met later in the saga. Now, this isn't to say that the show's just downright awful though. Blood Origin is a straightforward take on Seven Samurai, and a story about a band of heroes getting together for a deadly mission. Sage Baylor, the story's main antagonist, is convinced that the 7 warriors of destiny pose a threat, since they sound like a myth waiting to happen. The most interesting of these 7 is Meldoff, the dwarf talks to his hammer named Gwen, and Brother Death. Michelle Yeoh also shows up every now and then to give life some otherwise dull writing and action sequences. Aside from them, Dylan Moran is definitely having a great time as the mercenary leader, Uthrak One Nut. But beyond this, there's nothing really that stands out about the story. The show's potential is wasted on 2 uninteresting protagonists who take up screen time with boring scenes like their formulaic refusals of the call. The elves don't seem particularly elf-like, with their culture, settlements, and beards resembling those seen in the main series, which is set over 1,000 years ago. Also, it's hard to get excited about monsters with no deeper motivation than hate. And because of these sins, Blood Origin ended up with a 13% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, which is even worse than the Resident Evil series on Netflix, which quite literally might be the worst show of all time. But overall, I'd say the story is pretty average, and by the looks of it, that might be how things will be for the upcoming seasons too. Average is as far as it's going to get in The Witcher Season 3. In fact, it could get worse, if that's even possible. If you don't believe me, take it from Henry Cavill. Legend has it, the actor did his best to defend Andrzej Sapkowski's original work, but the evil Netflix officials refused to do so because they secretly despised the books and eventually drove Cavill away from the project. Now, obviously, it didn't go down exactly like this, but the network's repeated departures from the source material did play a huge role in Cavill leaving his role as Geralt. The actor had previously voiced his concerns about wanting to bring a more book-accurate Geralt to the screen. However, it looks like they were left unheard, and while nothing is confirmed, whatever route Netflix decides to take, they better nail it, because Season 3 could make or break the entire series. Fans are already tired of the series after 2 seasons and 2 spin-offs that have strayed further and further from the spirit and tone of the novels and games. Season 3 could be Netflix's last chance at repairing the damage they've done, because if they don't, it's unlikely that anyone, not even the biggest fans, will be tuning in for the next one. And that's been the latest on The Witcher. See ya.